weapons to the U.S. allies' military if it moves full speed ahead with an assault on Rafah. This is a city, the southern part of Gaza, where more than 1 million Palestinians are sheltering. The threat, which marked a shift in Washington's public approach to the war, came after the Biden administration halted a shipment of bombs last week amid concerns over Israel's plans to invade that part of southern Gaza. Also in the news today, in a combative cross-examination, Stormy Daniels battled former President Trump's lawyers as they attacked her account of a sexual encounter with Donald Trump in a Nevada hotel. Trump's lawyer defending Trump in his criminal trial spent almost 3 hours delving into Stormy Daniels' memories of that 2006 night in Lake Tahoe, as well as suggesting that Stormy Daniels' desire to tell her story was motivated only by money. Eventually, Trump's lawyer went straight to the point, saying, "You made all this up, right?" she asked. And Stormy Daniels responded very forcefully, "No." At the conclusion of the day, Trump's lawyers asked the judge whether he could modify a gag order to let Trump respond publicly to Stormy Daniels' testimony. They also asked the judge yet again for another mistrial. And the judge answered no and no. And Representative Mike Johnson can now, for better or worse, truly lay claim to being Speaker of the whole House, after Democrats saved him from a Republican-led coup on Wednesday in another remarkable moment in a chaotic Congress filled with lots of chaotic moments. Had Democrats not come to the rescue for Mike Johnson, the votes existed in his own party to actually oust him. And graduates at the University of Southern California are facing a much altered commencement celebration on Thursday after weeks of turmoil on campus. The private Los Angeles institution, a pillar of the nation's second largest city, has faced harsh criticism over its handling of the pro-Palestinian student activism that disrupted its lush quad and has its campus in turmoil. Well, the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office released police body cam video today showing one of its deputies shooting and killing an Air Force airman at his off-base apartment last week. Senior Airman Roger Fotson, only 23 years old, was shot late Friday afternoon by a deputy responding to a call of a disturbance in progress. And Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson announced today that he's seeking a court order to force the Seattle Archdiocese to turn over files on priests accused of sexual abuse and to make its archbishop answer questions under oath as part of a sweeping probe into how the state's 3 Catholic dioceses handled claims of child sexual abuse. Ferguson is looking into allegations that the Catholic Church has facilitated and attempted to cover up decades of pervasive sexual abuse of children by church leaders in Washington state. And independent presidential candidate Robert Kennedy said in an interview released yesterday that he would allow women to have abortions at full term if that was their choice. The latest answer he has given on abortion policy, and one that provoked a surprise reaction from a lot of people, including his own running mate. Now, he made this announcement or this proclamation during an interview with a podcaster, a former ESPN host. She asked Kennedy what the limit should be for women to have an abortion. Kennedy responded, "Should there be a limit? Or are you saying all the way up to full term, a woman has a right to have an abortion?" And apparently he said yes. Well, that's the news of the day. And this is Areva Martin in Real Time. And I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop shop for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm joined by 2 of the best in the business. That's Dr. Carlos Hill. He is an author and professor at the University of Oklahoma. And Jared Hill. He is the NAACP award-winning author of the book, Historically Black Phrases. He's also a former president of NABJ. He's also a podcast host. Needless to say, Jared's got a lot going on. And I'm super excited to be joined in this hour by my good friends, Carlos and Jared. And in hour 2, you know what we do? That's the hour where we go behind those headlines. We go deep and we dig, and we bring you those stories that people are talking about, or at least those stories that we think people should be talking about. Well, in this hour, I'm going one-on-one with award-winning journalist Natasha Alford. Now, Natasha has written a best-selling book about her life. It's a memoir, in fact. Now, Natasha's not 60, she's not 70, she's not 80. She's not at the end of her career where typically someone would write a memoir, but Natasha has a very interesting story to tell. She is what I guess some folks would consider multiracial. She is both African American and Puerto Rican, and her book is called American Negra. It's a narrative in part, like it says a memoir, but also a narrative. It's partially a cultural analysis because she writes about growing up in a working class family from Syracuse, New York, and having to deal with both her Blackness and being Puerto Rican. And she is very honest and transparent about what she experienced in terms of Black folks, saying that she had good hair when she went to a Black hair salon, and then going to Puerto Rican and dealing with her Puerto Rican family and friends who said she was too dark. So she really talks about how folks growing up with, multi-dimensional, multi or intersectionality in terms of their ethnicities, some of the challenges they face. And she's really, I think, opening the door, lots of issues around colorism, and just how we as a country accept folks who don't fit neatly into any of our little boxes. So I'm super excited to sit down with Natasha. She also happens to be a Harvard grad, so I'm always happy to talk to my fellow alums. So we're going to talk about her book. We're going to talk about protests on college campuses, because she, as a journalist, has been out on some of those college campuses talking to students. So make sure you stick around for hour two, because we got lots to talk about. But before I bring on my guest, here's what I'm thinking about in real time. I've been following the beef, like many of you have, between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. And boy, is it getting hot in here. Well, I know that's a Nelly song, but the Kendrick and Drake beef seems to be going into a really dangerous place. We know that Kendrick made several allegations against Drake during their first headline-making rap beef. In his victory clinching song, Not Like Us, Lamar renews his criticism about Drake's cultural identity and alleged inauthentic relationships with fellow artists. Here's one of the lines. He says, "You called Future when you didn't see the club. Lil Baby helped you get your lingo up." He says, 21 Savage gave you false street cred. He says, "You run to Atlanta when you need a few dollars. No, you don't. Or no, you're not a colleague. You are a effing colonizer." Now, I didn't say that with the same rhythmic, style that Kendrick would use, or he does use, but I think you get the point. He calls Drake a effing colonizer. Now, for years, Drake has faced allegations that he cozies up to rap artists and replicates their sound and their style for personal gain before moving on to his next prey, or what some people would say his next project. Rappers like Earl Sweatshirt, Rick Ross, and Pusha T have all spoken out about the purported pattern and claims of Drake being what they call a culture vulture. That rumor has been swirling around for decades. Now, most of these allegations, again, they go back many, many years. And some of them say it's because Drake has this way of adopting phony accents. They say he uses music that's similar to others, and that he is often, stealing, biting off other artists. Now, I don't know. I think people have questions also about Drake's authenticity when it comes to his Blackness. We've heard that before. And it's based on what a lot of folks say is, the dominant belief that Canadians, which Drake is Canadian, believe that Canadians are exclusively white, and that Canadian music is exclusively folk or country, and that hip hop and R&B is somehow exclusively created for Black Americans. Now, Drake himself is biracial. He's Canadian and Jewish, and he has roots in lots of music, he says. And for a long time, Drake has talked about not being, quote unquote, Black enough to be in hip hop music. Woo! So there's a lot going on between Drake and Kendrick Lamar and these allegations of him being a culture vulture, this talk about him being Black enough to be in hip hop music, what it means to be Canadian. Lots of issues here. And I'm so glad Jared Hill, who happens to be a culture critic, is joining us, as well as Carlos Hill. They're not related, but they're both Hills, because Carlos is a professor of African American studies, and he knows a lot about these debates about who's Black, who's not Black, what music is Black, what music is not authentically Black. So I can't wait to get their take on this beef and on where it's going, the escalation of it now. Actually, folks calling Drake being called an effing colonizer. And we all know what a colonizer is, and it's not a compliment. I'll just leave it at that. And when we come forward or when we're on break, you can look it up in the Urban Dictionary, but it is not a kind label to have attached to your name, particularly if you are a hip hop artist like Drake. So when we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, it's Tavis Smiley. First, thank you for your support of KBLA Talk 1580. We deeply appreciate you. So, I get asked all the time, Tavis, when are you going to bring back that State of the Black Union symposium you used to do? You know, the one where you had all those Black intellectuals on stage every year and everybody watched all day live on C-SPAN? Yeah, I know the one.
Let's bring them back.
Well, I am pleased to tell you that if you go to KBLA1580.com right now, you can sign up to be in the audience here in Los Angeles when we go back live on C-SPAN with a stage full of Black thinkers and influencers for a historic conversation. America has never seen a stage full of Black folk talking about the urgency of now. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. It's going down Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. at the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com. Once we reach capacity, you'll have to watch us on C-SPAN. But if you want to be in the room when we go live from Los Angeles, Tuesday, June 18th, head to KBLA1580.com right now to reserve your seat. Caring about the climate, caring about the community. With KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
I believe up there. Hey!
Ooh, I'm so ready for this weekend away with my girls.
Hey, hit the road. How about some free gas?
Free gas? How?
Try new Febreze car for some serious freshness, and you can win gas for a full year. Visit Febreze.com to learn more.
Say less.
You may not win, but you're gonna have a fresh smelling whip.
Thanks, DJ Fresh. Now how about some music?
Hey, yo, this next one goes out to new Febreze car for giving you a chance to win free gas.
La 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 la.
No purchase necessary. Must be 18 to enter N73124 for rules and how to enter. Visit Febreze.com.
On your period, sudden gushes happen without warning. But now you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable. With Always, fear no gush.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellness.
We are back, and Carlos Hill and Jared Hill are here. And boy, am I glad the two of you are here, because this beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake is really escalating, with Kendrick calling Drake an effing colonizer, and folks now bringing back, 10-year-old allegations Drake being called a culture vulture, and some questioning whether he is Black enough for the whole hip hop genre of music. Let me get started with you, Jared. Culture vulture, effing colonizer. These are not compliments.
Oh, you gonna just toss it right to the light skin? Is that what this is? Is that what this is? That's what it felt like. I
Well,
will
you know what,
say,
Jared? We're kindred, right? Sister and brother here, okay?
I will say, like, this whole part of the conversation actually gets a little precarious to me, right? Like, if we kind of take like the bigger picture away from like the battles themselves and kind of like this idea of how we measure Blackness, it's actually something I've spent a lot of time thinking about while on tour in February. So our book came out, Historically Black Phrases from I, One of Your Little Friends to Who All Gonna Be There, available wherever books are sold. But we did a tour. Thank you. Yes, I see it there, Carlos. I appreciate you. But we were on tour throughout Black History Month and getting to kind of like be on stage with different cities and like talking about Blackness and playing our game, which we'll be doing on Juneteenth again soon. And like, it was interesting to me to see our Black folks who were coming up to be our contestants, who are all notable people in the community, who were all worried about their Black card getting revoked because of not winning the Black game show. And it was interesting to me. We kept having this conversation about there is no Black card being revoked tonight, right? Like, you're not going to be in trouble with your Blackness. When you go up for review every year, it's not going to come up that you didn't do well on our game. But it also made me start thinking about the like vastness of the Black experience and how many people live in states where they don't have a big Black community, or they live in places where they don't have exposure to Black community where they are, right? And like, now we have internet and things like that where people can be exposed in a lot of different ways, but like, different people have different experiences of Blackness. And I think that when we limit it by saying like, this is Black and that's not Black, we actually diminish what Blackness can be, because the truth of it is Blackness has always been around. Blackness started a lot of this, depending on what science you listen to. Blackness has shown up everywhere. Blackness is everything and in everything. And so the idea that this isn't Black and that's Blacker than the other thing is actually really limiting us in a way that I don't think we intend to, but really ends up being anti-Black.
Woo. I don't gotta say nothing, Areva.
Now you got to give us that like history professor analysis of what an effing colonizer is. Jared just broke down that we need to expand our definition of Blackness, which I agree with 100%. But it's pretty deep to be called a colonizer. It's so funny because I was just telling someone that I got an award a year or two ago, and one of the gifts, this organization, they give you tons of gifts, and one of them was a framed plate, and it was the last series of plates signed by the Queen before she, unfortunately passed away. And they had it framed and this beautiful. It went home in my garage, and I was moving into a new office, and I brought a bunch of stuff from my office, and it happened to be in a box. And my decorator says, "Oh my gosh, you have a plate from a Queen." And I said, "Put that colonizer plate back in the box." And she was like, "Colonizer? What do you mean?" And so even the notion of colonizer, like who are the, could be acceptable. The Queen, this woman was like, "Oh my God, you have a plate from the Queen. This is the biggest thing on the planet." And I was like, how'd that get in this box? So talk to us about what it means to be a colonizer, and why would Kendrick call Drake an effing colonizer?
I mean, that is one of the most harshest criticisms I've heard. I mean, what happened to rap battles? I mean, this is rap battle on steroids that just keep going and going and going. And it's becoming an epic. It's becoming an epic rap battle, because I don't remember when Nas and Jay-Z were battling it out in the early 2000s, us talking about it on radio shows like this. So rap battles have really come a long way.
What'd you say, smart? So professors, lawyers, and journalists talking about rap battles, huh?
I'm telling you. But my dear brother Jared, this beautiful book, I laugh every time I want to enjoy my people and love my people. I pick this book up, y'all. But let me just say that to be called a colonizer in hip hop is the biggest diss, because that's usually reserved for white hip hop artists who are trying to be Black, who are trying to act Black. And for Drake to be put in that same mold is the biggest diss because of his largesse as an artist, right? He is of Kendrick and all the people he's battling with. It is no doubt who is the biggest, the best, and the most had the most impact in hip hop over the last, say, 10 years. But nonetheless, right, he's susceptible to these kinds of disses because of colorism and his Canadian identity. What my dear brother Jared Hill has said is right? We cannot diminish blackness even in rap battles, right? Henry Louis Gates has said something really smart. He said, if there are 40 million ways of being black, or excuse me, if there are 40 million black people, now there's 45 million black people in America. If there are 40 million black people, there's 40 million ways of being black. And what I hate, and this is the last thing I'll say, Areva, I hate for black people living in America to be terrified of not being black in America when we are experiencing racial violence at the levels that we are. This, talk about double consciousness. This is the worst of it. And I think this battle is helping us to understand it in some new ways.
Oh, let me ask you this, Jared. So does Drake, like, how does he identify racially? Does he identify as a white Canadian, as a black Canadian? Do you know? I mean, because Canadian is like being an American, right? So I'm an American. Doesn't tell you anything about my race, or being a Canadian doesn't necessarily tell you anything about his race.
I mean, I think generally people don't make the connection of like Canadian and blackness that often, right? The idea of being Canadian is typically like a white man on a horse, probably in the Mountie uniform or something like that. The maple leaf, maybe the A's and all those different kinds of things. I'm probably going to get in trouble if I go too much further down that line. But I think that the thing that they're also touching on is, yes, there's a light skin piece of the Drake story. There's the being biracial piece of the story, but also like Drake is a huge corporate artist, right? Like with some of the biggest deals, making some of the most money, like being the darling of Apple Music, you know, having the huge plane. Like Drake has really leaned into, you know, being the big money star, right? And I mean, there's a number of those folks, but like I think there's also a piece of that comes into that conversation where how we look at Drake as being so corporate, so big, so enormous that like the idea of calling him a colonizer, it feels like it wraps up more than just the colorism piece or just the biracial or the nationality piece. But like there's a lot of things that kind of come up when you call Drake a colonizer.
Yeah, you know what? A part of it is like, okay, we know Kendrick's roots from Compton. You know, we know how, you know, Kendrick relates to the community and his relationship with community. So Jared just brought up this notion of Drake being more of a corporate artist, you know, who's had all these big deals, who obviously has taken hip hop to a whole nother level. And a part of this, isn't it, Carlos, people saying if you're an authentic, real hip hop artist, you can't also be a corporate hip hop artist? Like somehow those are, you know, incongruent, inconsistent. If you're a real rap artist, you got to have street cred, you know, that's very different from corporate cred.
I mean, those are old debates from the 90s hip hop. What does it mean to be hard? What does it mean to be street? I think the early 2000s took care of that with Bling Bling and all of that, right? Hip hop embraced the luxury. It embraced, you know, celebrating wealth, celebrating opulence, and Drake is a part of that, right? But what really matters is he's not also clothed in street. Right. He doesn't speak street vernacular. He doesn't present himself in that way. And that opens himself up when he's trying to battle folk like Kendrick, who are from that, and he's Compton, for God's sakes. He's West Coast rap. He's the best of West Coast rap. He's made by the best West Coast rappers. They don't have the same, they don't come from the same kind of hip hop ilk. And so I think that's a lot of the.
Well, wait a minute, Carlos, I'm thinking about Snoop. So Snoop would be of the same kind of genre as Kendrick, but who could be more corporate than Snoop hanging out with Martha Stewart? You know, by all means.
Absolutely. And but Snoop represents that and the streets, right? That and West Coast hip hop. right? He represents that in ways that Drake does not, and Drake has never tried to really. And at the same time, to my dear brother's point, Drake emphasizes his mogul status, right? That's what he wants to be considered, like a Puffy, like a Jay-Z, moguls of hip hop. That ain't Kendrick. Kendrick comes from a very different way of and I think that's where the beef is.
Yeah, and so Jared, I guess Kendrick is saying this is the way, and unless you are representing the more traditional street, hip hop artists, that mogul. But I wonder, would he say that about Jay-Z? Would he say it about Diddy pre the allegations of sexual misconduct of Diddy? Would he say that about those artists?
I don't think so. I mean, to Carlos's point, like, part of the thing with Drake has always been what he presents as different, right? Like, I remember in the early days of Drake's career, him talking about
hold that thought for me.
Okay.
Hold that thought for me, Jared. We've got to go to break. When we come forward, we're going to continue this interesting conversation about Drake and Kendrick Lamar and the state of hip hop in America. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Time is the right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Tyreek Wynn. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. The Louisiana Supreme Court is poised to make a huge move ahead of the November election. There has been a fight over the way congressional boundaries are drawn. Civil rights groups are asking the High Court to use a map that gives the state a second black majority district. A Community Reparations Commission in Western North Carolina is making its first rounds of recommendations. A 25-member group designated to Asheville and Buncombe County is suggesting that local officials invest in 4 projects designed to support Black communities. A civil rights icon is being honored by way of a new statue at the U.S. Capitol. The statue of late Arkansas native Daisy Gadsden Bates was unveiled Wednesday in the National Statuary Hall. The new statue is one of 2 that will eventually replace statues previously honored Arkansas lawmakers from the 19th century. The statue of singer-songwriter Johnny Cash will be installed later on this year. That's the latest. I'm Tyreek Wayne on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Over in Long Beach, on the 710 North before Del Amo Boulevard, an accident on the right shoulder with stop traffic from PCH currently up to 20 minutes. In Glendora, expect a 40-minute backup from Highway 134 as it crashes on the right shoulder of the 210 East after Lone Hill Avenue. Stall has been cleared back in Long Beach's 405 South at Lakewood Boulevard. However, the traffic recovery is over an hour and a half from Wilshire Boulevard, still running heavy. And in Universal City, watch for a crash currently on the right shoulder of the 101 North at Vineland Avenue with heavy traffic over 20 minutes currently from Vermont.
Hey, DQ fans, cool off with their new Summer Blizzard treat menu. Try new picnic peach cobbler or snag a perfect beach treat like their new peanut butter cookie dough party. The new Summer Blizzard treat menu is one you won't want to miss. Only at participating DQ locations. Happy taste good.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Minnesota Timberwolves forward Karl Anthony Towns was named this season's NBA Social Justice Champion. The award is named after Lakers legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem heads up the committee that evaluates candidates for the annual award. Anthony Towns was chosen for his work with voting rights initiatives. He played a major role in the passage of a bill called Restore the Vote, a law in Minnesota that gives ex-offenders the right to vote. The law restored voting privileges for more than 55,000 ex-offenders in Minnesota. If you've seen Ava DuVernay's film Origin, Anthony Towns helped make the film possible as one of DuVernay's major investors. Anthony Towns will receive Kareem's award Friday night in Minneapolis before Game 3 of the Timberwolves Denver Nuggets playoff series. This is the 4th year the NBA has honored a social justice champion. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Come to
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, We don't back down.
Drop it. Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-78.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king. Climate is king. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Carlos Hill and Jared Hill are here. We've been talking about this beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake, what it means in a broader context of hip hop music and issues around race and culture. In hour two, we're going to be talking to award-winning journalist Natasha Alfred about her new memoir. So make sure you stick around for that. All right, Jared, I was asking a question about whether this same complaint, this complaint of being corporate, could be lodged against Jay-Z and Diddy and lots of other hip hop artists, not lots, but there's a handful of them that have kind of transcended what we think of as traditional hip hop artists. They have major contracts with corporate brands and corporate entities, and they flow a different way than folks like Kendrick. But would that same criticism, I should say, be lodged against them, you think?
I think the origin stories of the people we're talking about matter. Right. And what I was saying before we went to break was I remember Drake talking about when he was first kind of becoming a major artist and or really kind of being developed, Wayne saying to him, don't stop smiling. We don't see a whole bunch of rap artists smiling, right? We don't see them looking like Drake did, being so clean cut in the way that he was and the way that he approached the conversation. They were like, no, that's your thing. Lean into that. That's your superpower. And so him being Canadian and a child actor and all these other things, they're all part of his origin story. And none of that origin story really has a street kind of vibe to it. And so then to bring that to the present day, when we see Drake has gone so corporate, I think it's a lot easier to call him a colonizer than it is with Jay-Z when we know Jay-Z's backstory or any of the the majors that we think about. And I also think about the interesting ways that we've seen so many hip hop superstars transform their careers. When I think about right now the way that the majority of people that are alive today don't even know Ice-T as a rapper, but they know him as an actor, or Queen Latifah as an actress, as opposed to having been a rapper, etc. And so I think the origin of the person kind of matters, how they came into the story, no matter how much they've changed since.
Mm-hmm. Well, talking about, rappers going mainstream, look at all the rappers that were on the red carpet at the Met Gala of all places. the event of events with A-listers, celebrities, and they're, who shut the carpet down? Cardi B, this massive dress that she had on. So yeah, we're going to continue to follow that beef. It's just interesting that it now is really touching upon some very significant issues that we deal with in this country on a daily basis. Speaking of salacious allegations, obviously in that courtroom today in Manhattan, Stormy Daniels was back on the witness stand, 3 hours of cross-examination by Trump's attorneys, basically trying to paint her as a liar who made up the story about having sex for the sole purposes of extorting money. Stormy Daniels, tearful at times, particularly yesterday when she was talking about her daughter and concerns about her daughter. But boy, was she steadfast. She was forceful. She was at times combative. And she wasn't giving any ground to Donald Trump's team. Carlos, help us understand the significance of watching a former president have to sit 10 feet away from a woman who is detailing every single detail of a sexual encounter, and he can't say anything. He asked the judge after the hearing or after the trial today, could the gag order be lifted so that he could respond? And the judge said categorically no. So we know Donald Trump is fuming. Yesterday, he actually blurted out bullshit under his breath. It wasn't under his breath. People heard it. But help us understand the significance of what's happening, because I think it's all becoming so normalized because of who Donald Trump is.
Well, let me just sit on what you said and Donald Trump's doing in the courtroom. It really makes me feel good for him to feel powerless in this moment, being, the judge not allowing him to break that gag order and him being forced to listen to what he actually did do. And I'm glad that Stormy Daniels is speaking her truth. And whether or not he's truly held accountable, she's gone on record and we can never say we didn't know, right? That's what is key to me in all of this. She is laying out to us, and not just Stormy Daniels. I don't even think she's the biggest story. It's his assistants, it's his bookkeepers, it's Michael Cohen who are documenting, who are telling the court, this is exactly what he did. This is exactly what he did. Even if you want to disbelieve what the encounter, you can't disbelieve what they're telling you, the money transaction that happened. So he did do this. Now, what we decide is the punishment is different. And so this again is an existential election. Do we care about any of this?
No, that's such a great point. It's no doubt that he did it. The details that Stormy Daniels provides can only be provided by someone that experienced this. No way would she be able to maintain the consistency in the way she's told this story. And on the other hand, too, let's not forget, nobody would go through the lengths, the channels, the trials, tribulations that he went through to keep a story from being told that wasn't true. I mean, if this didn't happen, Donald Trump would have been the first one shouting from the rooftop and calling her horse face and everything else that he has managed to call her. So no doubt that this story bothered him in a significant way. But Jared, what do you make of his lawyers' attempts during their opening statement, having Eric Trump come to trial? They really think the jury is going to believe that Trump is a family man who needs to go to his son's graduation, that was so concerned about his wife that he told Hope Hicks, one of his aides, make sure she doesn't get the paper, as if that was going to stop her from learning about the story, but that he somehow really cared about embarrassing his wife. Is that believable as a story?
I think the question of what's believable in this story gets more and more difficult every day, right? Of like, none of this is believable. And like, oh, I absolutely believe what so-and-so just told me about what he did, right? Like some of it is so outrageous. I think the thing that is really concerning to me about the believability of it all is how it's getting reported on differently in different outlets, right? Because I've been watching MSNBC and a bit of CNN, and then I turned on Fox News and was looking at the different ways that they were all covering the same testimony. And that was alarming to me, right? So you watch on MSNBC.
So break it down for us. How was Fox? I'm sorry, how was Fox covering this? I have not checked out Fox.
Yeah, I turned on Fox and they're talking about Stormy Daniels as having been a disaster on the stand today, right? As having, really been broken down by the defense and how useless she was to the case and how what she was talking about had nothing to do with anything. And I was like fascinated by the contrast of watching the other cable newsers where they were talking about how effective she was, right? And how, there were some moments where her testimony actually really was effective in being able to prove what she was saying had happened, but also that she was humanized in a way, right? They try to position her as having come from sex work. They try to position her as inhuman. And why wouldn't you expect something like this to happen because of the work that you do and being in this space with him? In this hotel room. And so they talked a lot about the ways that her testimony was compelling, and that she was also resistant in the testimony when they were asking her leading questions, suggesting that she had said things, and she was saying, like, point out where I said that in the record, and then it was demonstrated that those things didn't exist, right? And so I think there were various instances where it was very clear that Stormy Daniels was an effective witness today, but it was also interesting to continually watch the coverage. And like once a week or so, I'll switch over to Fox and see like what are they giving over there. And it's always interesting because the way they position the coverage is as if the coverage is as if the trial itself is going as a disaster and that it's so obvious that it's a disaster. But when you watch any other coverage of it, it's completely different. And so they're positioning this in a way that is going to make it very easy for them to say that this was rigged if he's found guilty, which all signs point to that.
Well, it's so interesting. They said the same thing about the E. Jean Carroll trial, right? The $84 million case. They trash Fox News. Other Republicans trash E. Jean Carroll. She was unbelievable. This story was made up. There's no way anyone can believe this happened 30 years ago, blah, 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 blah. And $84 million. Later, Trump got thumped in the biggest way possible. One of the things that was very clear to me as a lawyer is that the cross-examination today by Trump's lawyer for 3 hours, it wasn't for the jury, it wasn't for the court, it wasn't even for the court of public opinion. It was for one man only, and that one man is their client, Donald Trump, because Donald Trump cannot talk about Stormy Daniels or any other witnesses or jurors because of the gag order. And once in his life, he's being forced to adhere to some rules, the rules that all of us have to play by on a daily basis. So since he can't trash Stormy Daniels, he sent his lawyer into that courtroom today to try to demean, humiliate, get really personal and nasty, making comments about her being a sex worker. And, well, you're used to fake sex. That's what you do as a porn worker. And she says, no, the sex is quite real. Thank you very much. But it's clear from lawyers who try cases that Stormy Daniels doesn't have any knowledge about the arrangement of the payment, about the falsification of the business records, about how the payment was made, reimbursed to Michael Cohen. So in a different kind of case where the lawyers were in charge and not the client, Donald Trump, the cross-examination of Stormy Daniels would have been 20 minutes, 10 minutes. Ms. Daniels, you don't know anything about falsifying of records, do you? No. Ms. Daniels, you never saw any of these records, did you? No. Ms. Daniels, you don't know if Donald Trump talked to Michael Cohen about this? No. End of case. So, but this was all about trying to belittle her and humiliate her to satisfy Donald Trump's need to try to save face. And it didn't work. I mean, we don't know what the jury thought of it, but I can't imagine that any human being sitting there thought it was necessary to have her on the stand for 3 hours after she had been emphatic. She was not changing her story. So there was not going to be any Perry Mason moment where she just came, to some different conclusion and said, I lied, I'm sorry. That just wasn't going to happen. So we'll see. Donald Trump gets from his lawyers what he demands from his lawyers, and that's not always the best lawyering. We know that from so many other cases that he's been involved with. When we come forward, more of today's breaking news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
City of Los Angeles landlords, verify your tenant's Emergency Renters Assistance Program status today. Tenants approved for rental assistance are protected from eviction for non-payment of rent through May 31st, 2024. Approved rental assistance applications protect tenants from eviction for non-payment of rent. Refusing to accept rental assistance based on their source of income is illegal under law and can be used as a defense in an eviction case. Check your tenant's application status now at housing.lacity.org. That's housing.lacity.org. Tips to help improve your credit score in 2024. Establishing credit is an important key to achieving financial health, but building a credit history from scratch can feel challenging since you need credit to build credit. First, what does it mean to build credit? All consumers have a score between 300 and 850. You want your score to be as high as possible as lenders look at your credit score to make loan and credit decisions. A good credit score shows you have a track record of borrowing money responsibly. Remember, it's never too late to build or rebuild your credit. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. Pro Football Hall of Famer and urban peace pioneer Jim Brown believed in just that. So he founded the Amera I Can Foundation for Social Change in 1988, focusing on at-risk and high-risk youth in underserved schools and juvenile detention facilities, as well as adult incarceration and reentry initiatives. The core of the Amera I Can program is its 15-chapter life skills curriculum. Mastery of these skills allows individuals to meet their academic potential, conform their behavior to acceptable societal standards, and improve the quality of their lives by equipping them with what they need to confidently and successfully contribute to society. Today, the foundation is led by its president, Monique Brown, who has been actively involved in the organization for more than 25 years. The Amera I Can Foundation continues its work in memory of its founder, actor, philanthropist, and NFL legend Jim Brown. To get involved or make a donation, please visit AmeriICanCommunity.partners. That's AmeriICanCommunity.partners. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back. Carlos Hill is joining us. Jared Hill is joining us. And Jared, you are in Los Angeles, and the graduates at the University of Southern California, USC, faced a much altered commencement ceremony today. And this is after weeks of turmoil on their campus. The school has faced harsh criticism over its handling of pro-Palestinian student protests, as well as UCLA, Columbia University, universities really across this nation. What do you make of how USC has handled the protests that have happened on its campus, and then the altering of its commencement celebration, literally canceling the speech of its valedictorian because she was a Muslim? Well, they said because of security, but many believe it was because she was a Muslim American, and then canceling their celebrity, speakers who were supposed to be a part of this celebration.
So I should say I am a professor at USC Annenberg, and I haven't been on campus this semester. I'm not teaching this semester, but I feel like the way that I've seen most of these schools handling students has really pissed me off, to be quite honest. I feel like these are the spaces that students are supposed to be able to speak up. These are the spaces that are supposed to be for fostering this kind of learning from students, but also this kind of advocacy from students. And so to see USC moving in this way has been really disappointing to me, to be quite honest. I won't be back at USC for a little while, as I'll be heading to grad school at Harvard this fall. So I won't be there for a little while, but it has been frustrating to watch come from afar, to be quite honest with you.
Well, you just slipped that in there, Jared. You're headed to Harvard. Okay.
Well, I was. That wasn't.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Tell us about it.
Not the way you just took this drink after you said
At
that.
Harvard. What are you doing?
I will be going to Harvard, where I'll be a student at Harvard Divinity. I'll be studying the ways in which Black, queer, and trans people have been impacted by the Black church, and the way that the Black church has impacted us, to more effectively tell our stories and make sure that we can highlight the ways that we've shown up in that space, but also to make the church a safer place for us and a more inclusive place for us. Because I don't know if y'all have heard, but it hasn't been the best place to be a Black, queer, trans person, or a queer and trans person in many different instances. So that's the work that I'll be going to do. But also as a student, I'll be like, like pushing back against the school and being like, no, this is, I can't support XYZ. This is not okay. Free Palestine, right? And so I'm kind of on both sides of that right now, where I'm an incoming student and also a professor.
Well, thank you. Well, one, congratulations. And yes, I'm very familiar with the way that the Black church treats Black queer people. I actually have a niece who's a lesbian, and she has had the most horrific ordeal as a member of a Black church, one that's actually pastored or was pastored by a relative, a very close relative. And just some of the shame and guilt and just, just ridicule and that she has suffered as a member of the church, so much so that she's been suicidal at times. She's been just a lot of emotional issues that she has worked through, and I'm very proud of her for doing that. She's actually now a psychotherapist herself and helping other Black queer people deal with the issues of religion and faith. So kudos to you for doing that. Very much needed. Lots of folks who are suffering, who are religious, grew up in religious households, but rejected, maligned, and villainized vilified, I guess is the word, by the church. So really much important and needed work. Carlos, let me ask you what's happening on your campus, because what we saw yesterday on Capitol Hill were a bunch of secondary school leaders, like chancellors of the New York Public School District and some others, and they held their own. They did not let those Republican, committee members intimidate them or force them into, false equivalencies. And they're getting a lot of high praise. And they're saying these university presidents need to take a book or page out of the playbook of these high school leaders.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. And Jared, thank you for framing it for us. It's outrageous what's happening on college campuses, because in part, our college campuses are our conscience for this issue. We haven't seen protests and the level of protests, the ferocity of protests anywhere else besides these campuses, the extended. And not only that, these protests are calling for compassion for the 30,000 plus Palestinians that have been bombed to death, for the food aid that cannot get to those who are remaining, right? For the ways in which there's an imminent attack on Rafah, a city of 1 million where thousands have fled. Students are trying to say we need compassion, not more war. But yet what is happening, right? Repression, violent repression of these students. And so calling for compassion, but getting violent repression, that's outrageous. As for the reasons that you say, these are supposed to be the spaces in which students figure out these issues, right? And then I know in my classroom at the University of Oklahoma, I'm teaching my students not just to know about what's in Palestine, but to care about what's in Palestine. And so when they care about what's in Palestine, they go out there and protest, they get arrested, right? There's 27, over 20, I think I saw some outrageous figure where 2,700 students have been arrested for protesting, right? This war, right? Calling for divestment, right? That's outrageous, right? And, I just don't even know where to begin. And unfortunately for me, it's not happening at OU.
Well, the good thing is we see some changes happening at the policy level, and we can't help but we can't help but think, in my opinion, that some of what we're seeing at the Biden administration level is because of the protests. And Biden is taking a pretty strident stance and telling Netanyahu in no uncertain terms, we are not going to support you bombing Palestinians in southern Gaza, where they went to avoid being bombed. So innocent victims, children, elderly people, women, are losing their lives, as you said, Professor Hill, at just an alarming pace. And I say kudos to those students who have stood up, who've made their voices known. And I say horrible to these presidents who couldn't figure out a way to go forward with commencement exercises. The two shouldn't be inconsistent. They're not mutually exclusive. Those kids who have worked hard, who started college during COVID, who worked their butts off to earn their degrees, deserve a commencement exercise. And the fact that students are protesting should not have prevented these colleges from holding those commencement exercises. My theory, and I said this publicly, is that a lot of these presidents didn't want to face the criticism, the critique, and the potential embarrassment that they know that they would have faced during traditional commencements, because they all, get marched out and, get to talk about all the great things they've done at the university, and it's their moment to shine. But there wouldn't have been a whole lot of shining happening. But that's not a reason to deny thousands and thousands of students an opportunity to have their commencement. Leaders have to lead, and even during difficult times, they are expected to lead. And if any sacrifice had to be made, go out and get booed for 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. You can take it, grown person, and let the students have their commencement, because for many of them, this is the most important, professional experience they will have in their lives. All right, I'm off my soapbox. We're out of time. Thank you so much, Carlos. Thank you so much, Jared. Maybe Pastor Jared, the next time we see you.
Okay, now, now, sit down. Now,
calm down, Areva. Calm down.
now get somewhere now.
Not too much.
Hey, can I say one thing, Areva? I hold this book up because this is my favorite book right now. Jared Hill, professor at USC, as well as Harvard graduate student. This is my favorite book. Everybody go out and get Historically Black Phrases. Thank you for
All right. Love that plug, Brother Carlos. You guys be well. See you soon.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to be talking to an award-winning journalist about her new book. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Areva, I hope that was okay.
Oh, no.